Okay. I'll come back to the slide in 2 slides, okay, because I'll sort of, this is just the data, but the actual takeout from this comes a little bit later. Okay. With the economic downturn, US carriers and around the world, this is what I would have expected to see. Okay? Southwest are saying more closely bookings. Delta are saying narrow booking window, narrow. JetBlue booking curve is moving closer, and Allegiant, we were booking much closer to the time of travel. Okay, this is what I would expect to see. And then coming from JetBlue, this is probably the best one of the lot, okay, because it's telling you that not only are we booking closer in, but the impact that is having on change fees. That's a key growth area for ancillary revenue for airlines, and there's a trade-off there. Something I hadn't thought about before I saw that quote. Okay? So across the board in the US, okay, carriers are saying people are booking their travel closer to departure. I come back to this slide, and now I call this slide the blindingly obvious, the brain teaser, and the bracket, the 3 Bs. Okay, let's go through what these 3 Bs are. This one's the blindingly obvious. Hotels for 2009. It's pretty rare these days that a hotel's getting sold out. People don't feel the need to book in advance. They're waiting for last minute deals. They're booking much closer to the date of start. Absolute no-brainer. Here's the brain teaser though. Okay? Based on that previous slide that I showed for the US carriers and experience with the booking curve moving closer to departure, I'm about to put up a dashed black line for 2009. Okay? Look at the slide and just in your own mind think where you expect to see that dashed black line. I certainly didn't expect to see it there. And it's funny when you ask somebody to prepare data for you and they come back with an answer you don't like, your first reaction is to say, oh, that kills my whole story, how am I going to use it now? I can't use the slide anymore. What am I going to do? I've got to reinvent the presentation. But well, the other option is to actually try and understand what's happening here. I went to great ideas, maybe, I don't know, but I went with the latter to try and understand. So what happens here? I'll explain what it is. You've got to remember this is Amadeus online booking sites. Okay, we're not talking TMC data, this is not across the whole airline. Airlines, it's the business travel that's suffering a lot. Airlines are talking about moving seats out of business class, putting on more economy class seats. So leisure travel tends to be booked earlier than business travel. So that's one thing I think that's happening here. The other thing that's happening is when I look at the data, the growth in online websites, from our perspective anyway, is in international. A few years ago it was domestic. But the split between domestic and international is really moving towards international. In the early days of online, it was all about selling domestic fares. But people still bought the more expensive international fares from travel agencies. But the real growth area now online is international fares. When that mix changes, as it has quite significantly over the last 12 months, you see that lead time to purchase changing as well. So that's what's going on here. Finally, what's the bracket? There it is. And this is a concept that I'll use in the next few slides. And I sometimes refer to this as the airline's loss of control over the ancillary revenue process. The bigger that bracket is, think of it like a sieve, okay? The bigger that bracket is, the more revenue is slipping through and not being retained by the airline. I'll explain this further, but the challenge for the airline wanting to maximise ancillary revenue is to narrow that bracket, make the sieve smaller, reduce the lead time between the person purchasing the flight and purchasing additional ancillary revenue items. The longer the person waits to buy the car or the hotel or the destination content, the more likely they are to buy from somebody else, not you, and you don't get a cut of that revenue. This is just another way of saying what I said just then. Okay, this is a concept that I put up on the blog about a month ago, and it's got about four or five more page views than any other post I've ever done. And the word of mouth on this one was huge, and really happy with the take up in the industry. Obviously, people are passing around my email and all that. Okay? I'm not going to focus on this in detail. I don't have time today to do that. Okay? But it's the shadow, the light grey part of that bow tie is mainly what people are spending in their destination. The goal is to follow that red arrow and bring those purchases forward. Get it in that bracket where you have control. Where you have control is between the person purchasing their flight, which is the knot of the bow tie, at the end of the bow tie, the black part of the bow tie, which is when the person gets on the plane. Obviously in-flight is another area, I'm not going to address that. But in that part is where you have maximum opportunity to get a cut of that ancillary revenue. So let's focus on the bit that's interesting. And in this diagram I say, fish where the fish swim. Because if I'm going to cast the line with a hook to try and catch some of that ancillary revenue money, I can throw it to the left side of the bow tie or the right hand side of the bow tie. The left hand side is all around inspiration and travel space. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? There's a lot of innovation happening in this area. It's not really happening in the airline. The innovation is happening from startup companies, from blogs, people's photos from their trip. This is where people get information from government tourism boards, from other types of offline advertising, word of mouth. So when you've got a limited budget to spend on growing the ancillary revenue, where does the airline spend the money? On the left or the right? And I would make a very strong case that when it comes to measuring ROI, if you've got to choose between one or the other, I know where I'd be putting my money. I'd be going where I've got the maximum chance of getting some of that, where it's not always going to fall through the ceiling. Okay. So how can this bow tie concept, how can that help an airline make better investment decisions? Firstly, can you really measure the return on investment? Okay? If you're spending money in the left-hand side of the bow tie, it's very difficult to measure. This is something that I hear people working in social media talking about. Okay? It's important to be in social media. This is where decisions are made. Okay? I'm not saying ignore it, but measuring return on investment for participating in blogs or communicating in the social media space, social networks, it is more difficult to measure. When you're on the right-hand side, when you're actually at the point between the person purchasing their flight and flying, it is simple. I know how many hotels I sold before. I spent X amount of dollars implementing a new technique to sell more. I know how many hotels I sold after I did implement the change. There's my return, there's my investment, there's my ROI. It is so easy to measure that. There is no fluff. It either works or it doesn't work. And as I'll explain a little bit later, it works. So are you really measuring return or are you measuring something else? Okay? One of the things that drives me a little bit crazy when I work in the marketing side of the business, getting more involved in airline marketing, is when people start talking to me about email campaigns, direct marketing, and they start claiming success based on open rates or click-through rates. I don't care. Show me the sale rate. Show me the conversion rate. Once you show me that, then I might care about the click-through rates and the open rates that we want to, when we get back into the optimisation process. But unless you can give me hard sales data first, the rest of it is just fluff. I need to know return on investment, okay? The other stuff will come later, but don't forget what the main game is.